Hello everyone, and welcome back to the garden, and welcome back to our annual daffodil video. Last year was the first year that I made our complete daffodil tour video, and so many of you loved it. I really appreciate it. So I am here to do this again. Over the last few years, 4 or 5 years, I've started the process of collecting different varieties of daffodil. Initially, when I first started gardening, I thought there was just the regular, yellow daffodils that you see growing on the sides of the road sometimes. But as it would turn out, there is an entire world of these different, fancier daffodils that I had never even seen or even imagined that could have existed. And so I've been collecting them over the years, and in this video I'm going to show you all the different ones that I have kind of amassed in my own backyard. Some of these look great, some of them had problem with snow. We had a very late season snow this year that caused a lot of damage to a lot of the blooms, and some of them did fail, but we'll get into that later. So I guess we'll go ahead and start the tour. The very first daffodil to begin blooming in my garden is one called Orangery. I should also mention that this video is in the order that the daffodils bloom, so earliest to latest. This Orangery one is a split Corona cup. You can see the cup is nice and open, just kind of splayed out there. And this is a very, very deep, vibrant kind of orange color. Very, very nice in a vase, always with a good vase life and everything like that. No discernible fragrance that I've ever noticed. But needless to say, it was very nice. It was a part of one of the very first mixes that I ever grew in my garden to kind of introduce me to the more fancier varieties. So it always has a close place in my heart. Moving right along, the next daffodil we're going to take a look at is one that is completely new to me. This one is called Apricot Whirl. Now, as a fancier variety, this one is always a little bit more expensive, a little bit more on the pricey side, so I had kind of put off taking the plunge into buying some of these bowls, but this season I finally did it, and wow, I am not disappointed. I'm not even sure if the pictures are able to do this flower justice. They are so big and ruffly and immensely petaled. And that creamy peach color, oh my goodness, they are absolutely stunning. They also look very, very lovely in any kind of flower arrangement that I had put them in. Definitely a new favorite, a new contender for my all-time favorite variety of daffodil. Very pretty. The next bloom we have is one called Cassata. This is another one of the classic ones that I've always had in my garden since the first year. This was grown from a mix. The flowers open up in this bright yellow color, and over time as they sit in the garden they fade to more of a pastel yellow shade, which is very pretty. These Cassata are also really good for setting seed, using as a seed parent when you're wanting to produce seed. So that's another reason that I like to keep them around in the cut flower garden. Moving right along, the next flower that we have is one that I first began growing last year. This one is called Art Design. I noticed that last year a lot of the flowers were more of a kind of pastel yellow color, but when they began blooming this year, they were more of a deeper butter yellow color, which is interesting to note that there was a color change. Maybe there was a change in my soil or something like that. But as you can see, the cups of these are just nice and double. When they first open up, they're a little bit more compact, but as they age in the garden, those cups just continue to expand and get really big and full, and almost kind of have this kind of neat rose-like appearance that I really, really like. Very pretty, definitely a keeper. Would love to add more of those in the yard. Very similar to the Popeye, or very similar to the Art Design Daffodil, we have a variety that is called Popeye. And rather than being a yellow daffodil, this one is actually white. You can see we have the same kind of flower structure and arrangement of the petals, except these are a crisp white. Those back petals are a nice clean white color, and the inner bits is yellow and white. They kind of remind me of eggs for some reason. Don't ask me why, they just do. But very pretty, same kind of expanding center as the flowers begin to age. Very pretty in cut flower arrangements also. A very nice one. This is new to me this year. Moving right along in the garden here, we have another variety. This one is called Ice King. If you watched the video last year of the Daffodil Tour, you've seen Ice King before. These plants actually performed much better this year than they did last year, which I was so pleased to find. You can see that they have that kind of open cup. The double center is still very, very prominent. There's a little more yellow when they first open, and as they fade with time, you can see they kind of flare out and show a little more white. I kind of prefer that flared out look, but still very interesting, especially if you're unfamiliar with these kind of fancier daffodils. Sunny Girlfriend is another variety to return from last year here to the garden. It is a, I guess you would call it a split corona, but it's very, very soft, delicate looking and very ruffled. When they first open, they're a little bit more orange. Over time, they kind of fade to an orange pink color, which I think is very, very lovely. You can see I tried to take pictures of different color variations here in this video, so you kind of get the full range. Lots of blooms this year. This one performed much better than last year. I was so pleased. The next set of daffodils to open up here in the yard were a variety called Martha Stewart. I just have a very small patch of these, I think maybe 10 bulbs. But as you can see, they're just a regular single normal cup. And the back petals are white, but the cup is this peachy pink color with a little bit of yellow in there that provides a very, very nice contrast. I also like the ruffling around the edges. No noticeable scent with these or anything like that. Haven't noticed that they produce seed, but very pretty for arrangements and in vases and things like that. A little bit on the smaller side. My stems were nice and long, but the flowers were a little bit on the smaller side, unfortunately. The next variety I wanted to show you is one called Replete. Last year I managed to get some good footage of this one, but the blooms were a little scattered out this year, and we had a bit of a late frost and kind of seemed to impact it. But they were this beautiful peachy coral color. They are double, but I just love that pink kind of salmon color that some of these doubles come in. These look really, really great with some of my ranunculus and some of my tulips and things like that to make kind of soft pastel flower arrangements for the spring, which is, you know, in the springtime, that's one of the things I really, really love. Again, no noticeable fragrance, but the stems are nice and strong, and of course the flowers are nice and big, and they don't seem to droop or anything like that here in my yard, so I think they're definitely a keeper and one I want to keep growing in the future. Moving on to the next variety that began to open, it was one called Paul's Glory. Now this was a special order from PHS Daffodils. They specialize in daffodils that are a little bit more expensive, and these were kind of a treat for myself. I like to kind of overspend on a couple, you know, plants once a year. But very pink, just large pink cups. They're very pretty. Very similar to a lot of the other varieties that I've grown, but very nice. Another variety from PHS. This one is called Lavender Belle. I'm not quite sure where the name comes from. You can see the back petals are a creamy yellow color, and the cup is kind of a pink to white color depending upon the age of the flower. You don't really get a lavender vibe, but still very, very nice. I mean, I can't complain, that's for sure. The next one that came from PHS is one called Strawberry Pie. This is very pretty. It's got a pinkish red color, kind of coral color, with a kind of expanding yellow center. Unlike anything I've ever seen here in the garden, that center and the yellow, it really seems to glow in the sunlight. I really, really like this one. If I ever have the funds, I'd love to get more of this one. The next one is one called Thrice. You can see rather than having a cup there, it has those 3 distinct petal sections, which I think is very unique and very interesting. Also, we have one called Strawberry Cream or Strawberry Creme, or however you say it. Very wide cup with an orange base of outer petals. Very nice. The next one here in this collection we have Jayne Mansfield. I had expected more from this one. It's just an outer yellow with kind of a creamy base. We also have one called Havens WH273. Don't know all the numbers, but very nice and ruffled. I like it a lot. And my favorite from this collection from the PHF's daffodils is one called Cockatiel. Now, I only had 2 bulbs of each of these PHS daffodils. They are much more pricey than, you know, anything that you would buy wholesale, but look how special these Cockatiel daffodils look. They are insanely beautiful. I'm not even sure that the camera is doing them justice. White outer petals in the back, and this center with this ring of pastel pink. So incredibly pretty. I just can't even put it into words. I think easily one of my favorite daffodils of the whole garden this spring. Amazing. Love it. Okay, moving right along back to the main show here. We have a daffodil called Lingerie. This is one of my favorites from last year, and as returner, it's one of my favorites again. The blooms on this are just so strong. All the stems are held nice and strong. The blooms are fully double. They're huge. They got a little bit of yellow in the center that makes them look very nice. You know, even in the rain, they held up. They didn't get muddy. You'll see a little bit later we had a lot of rainstorms, and a lot of these flowers ended up getting muddy. Just a very solid choice for cut flower arranging. I think one of my favorite double yellows and whites for cut flowers. Very, very nice. The next flower we're going to take a look at here in the garden coming into bloom is one called Pink Charm. These pink charms, as you can see, they're a single type with this smaller cup, but even though the cup is a little bit smaller, we have that nice outer ring of pink. It's a very kind of soft pink. Last year they seemed to be more intensely colored, kind of reddish pink, but this year they're kind of a coral soft pink, which I think is absolutely beautiful, especially in terms of single cups, because I don't grow many single cups at all here in the yard. Next, the next daffodil to begin bloom. This one is called Sailorman. Now, admittedly, I am not the biggest fan of just solid yellow flowers. It's just a personal preference. However, this one is a true stunner. It works so hard. Both years that I planted these, you know, the plants were covered in flowers. They're a split corona type, but they're so fluffy. I would say they could pass as a double because they are just really full and big and vibrant. And just a good choice. I really like this one, and it surprises me. The next daffodil that we're going to see here in the yard coming into bloom is one that I can't pronounce. I'm sorry that I can't pronounce that word. I'm not going to try. But this one was another one that came as a huge surprise to me personally, because, you know, I bought them because the picture in the catalog showed this unique edging around the outer cup. Unfortunately, I didn't really get that color edging. If you Google it, you'll see what I'm talking about. But these cups are enormous. These flowers are enormous, bigger than my hand, the palm of my hand. The color, the orange, is a bright orange that I've never seen in any daffodil. I loved these. It was such a surprise. Moving right along, the next daffodil that we are going to take a look at is another pretty one. Can you see a pattern developing? These are British Gamble, and just like the last ones, these things are huge. I cannot get over how big these flowers are. I honestly, before I started growing daffodils, I had no clue that the flowers could be this large. Again, flowers the size of the palm of my hand, and these cups are enormous. The cups in coloration are very similar to the Martha Stewart, maybe a little bit less yellow, but the actual trumpet part is enormous. I would definitely grow these. The stems are strong. Definitely one of my favorites. Another one of my favorites here in the yard, which is surprising because this is relatively quote-unquote plain, you know, considering what I do grow. Next is another new to me daffodil this year. This one is called Sorbet, and I was mainly drawn to this one because of this unique kind of pinwheel looking pattern in the center cup. Turns out that's not really a pinwheel. It's kind of just a, I don't know, a difference in coloration on the petals. It's kind of striped rather than just a solid color, a mix of solid colors. Either way, these turned out very, very pretty. This is the part in the video where we start having a lot of trouble with rain and mud splatter, by the way, so I do apologize. I did try to find the cleanest blooms I could find to show you, you know, in filming this, but sometimes the weather just doesn't. work in your favor, unfortunately. Next is a classic daffodil, one I consider a classic. At least this is Ice Follies. This is one of the very first daffodils that I ever have grown. I see these growing all the time in people's yards from, like, you know, the home improvement store. But rightfully so, they are very pretty. They're just a simple white flower with that kind of opened up yellow cup in the center. They first open a vibrant yellow color and over time kind of open more and fade to more of a pastel yellow. Ice Follies is one of my favorite seed producers too. I believe it's a seed producer. Don't quote me on that, but I'm pretty sure I've gotten tons of seeds from these. Love Call is the next variety of daffodil to begin blooming here in my yard. As you can see from the images, it's very, very similar to like a Cassata or an Orangery variety, but it just opens up a little bit later here in my growing space. And also, it's a little bit smaller. It performs a little bit smaller for me here in my yard. I'm not sure which I would prefer over either one, but it's nice. I'm not sure I'd grow it again. Dick Wilden or Dick Wilden, not sure how to say it, was back again in my yard this year as well. And just like last year, it just underperformed. I'm not sure if it's the planting space or what, but you know, the stems are just so incredibly short. It's very hard to even use them in cut flower arrangements. The plants are also pretty small. I might move these bulbs and see what happens, but they're such a big double flower, so I really, really, really want them to grow well. These double flowers are huge and they're beautiful. It's just I'm having trouble with stem length and it's bumming me out. Let me know if your Dick Wildens are short in your yard. I'd love to know because I really like this one. Next up, we have a beautiful variety called Salou or Salou. I don't know how you say it. But as you can see, it's very, very similar to Lingerie with the exception that it blooms just a little bit later. I would say if I was to compare the two, I think I prefer Lingerie a little bit more. It seems like my Salou daffodils have the tendency to nod their head down a little bit, but not to the point that they aren't usable. They're still very, very nice if you have the option to choose one or the other. But just something to consider as they're very, very similar. The next flower to begin opening in my yard was one called Isha or Isha. I'm not quite sure how to say it. I always call it Isha just because I have a close friend named Isha and that's how she spells her name. But as you can see, it's a double. We have that yellow, butter yellow color with the bits of orange in the center. Very pretty. This is not one that's one of my favorite color combinations just because, you know, personal preference and I love pastels. But if you love yellow and orange, you're probably not going to be disappointed by this one. The stems are strong, flowers are big. There's really not much to complain about with this. The flower form is beautiful. Next up in the yard, coming into bloom, we had this one. It's called Peach Cobbler. As a double, it's very similar to the other doubles that we've already shown, the Salou and the Lingerie. However, the Peach Cobbler does open up, and it's first open. It's a little bit kind of a yellow tint, and some of the inner double petals have more of a darker orange tint. I'm not quite sure if the camera is picking it up while I'm recording this audio. It's kind of hard to notice, but the inner bit is a little bit deeper, a little bit darker, but again, very similar. That's what I've found with a lot of these doubles is that a lot of them have very similar qualities, but good for cut flowers. No complaints. The next flower to open was one called Tahiti. Now, like the Isha one, Tahiti is very, very similar. The same kind of yellow coloration with the orange in the center. I would say that the yellow in the Tahiti variety is just a little bit more pale, more pastel, and but you know, noticeable enough to see it. The orange is very nice, and it might be a little bit darker. It might just be a kind of you know, an illusion just because the yellow is a little bit lighter. I'm not sure, but again, I wouldn't have both of these if I were to choose again. I think one would probably suffice in my yard. Next we have Geranium, and this one was a surprise. It is one of my favorite daffodils. Now you might be thinking, why? It looks just so plain and ordinary. These are multiple flowers on each stem, but the scent is incredible. A lot of daffodils are scented, and I try to state that, but these are so scented. They can make the entire garden smell enchanting if you like that scent. It's so gorgeous. I love them. I will always have geraniums. They are great. The next daffodil to bloom is one called Delibes or Delibes. I'm again not sure. This is just kind of a more plain yellow daffodil. However, that inner cup, that orange cup, has a dark orange band around the outside of it. The pictures really don't do this one justice. I think it's very pretty. I like that added bit of just a little bit of extra interest. Looks nice. Next is one called Easterborn. I only had a few bulbs of this one. Just a very big, very bright double that was so pretty. Mostly white in the center, which I really, really liked, but there was just a touch of a pastel yellow to give it a little bit more interest. And the stems were nice and strong. I loved this one. I would definitely want to grow this one again in the future. Very, very pretty in arrangements too. Definitely a keeper here for this first time grower for this one. The next variety open is one called Candy Princess. Now the footage you're seeing here is the Candy Princess from last season. And unfortunately, the Candy Princess from this season seems to have changed quite a bit. This is something that I noticed in one spot of the garden. You can see a lot of that inner white bit is gone, and really the only thing that we were left with was this outer peach bit and just a little bit of the inner white bit. Some of it went back to a full kind of single cup, which I'm fine with. These are still pretty, don't get me wrong. I'm just interested to see and to know what happened in my garden. This might not happen in your garden, but it definitely happened in mine. It's kind of weird, kind of odd, just something worth noting and showing y'all that, you know, sometimes things can change. Who knows why, but sometimes they do. The next daffodil is a variety called Pink Wonder, and I always kind of joke that this was my gateway daffodil to you know, the fancy daffodils. This is the first kind of fancier daffodil I grew. It's just a split corona, but that pink center, it's something special. It's so light, it's almost becomes translucent as the flower ages, and it's really beautiful. I really love this one. The next variety we have is one called Prosecco. Prosecco is a smaller type. It's a multi-flower on each stem, usually 2 to 3 flowers on each stem. They're kind of this pastel yellow color, and the inner cup there, that small inner cup, is a bright yellow that I think is very vibrant and very pretty. Another one that really, really looks good in a lot of pastel spring cut flower arrangements. This was the second year for Prosecco, and they performed so incredibly well. Just a really, really lovely smaller type to have here in the yard. The next type to start opening is one called Precocious. Now, the video that you're seeing here of this Precocious is what it looked like last year. This was planted next to the Candy Princess that also went under a change, and this one changed quite a bit. I'm not sure what happened, but as you can see here in the video, the petals kind of blurred together and made this striped peach and white petal. Don't get me wrong, I think this is gorgeous. I think something special, something really special has happened in my garden to create this kind of candy cane looking striped effect on this daffodil. I've never seen another variety that looks like this. So I will be interested to see if I move these, if this kind of keeps the same characteristic, or if they've morphed, or what has happened. But I really, really like it. Do let me know if you've ever encountered anything like this in your own garden. The next variety that we're going to be looking at here in the yard. Are you still here? Are you with me? This one is called Mallee or Mallee. I'm not quite entirely sure. But as you can see, they are a split corona type. They have that kind of ruffly effect on the petals. This year, mine opened in a very vibrant shade of this yellow and pink, with the yellow there in the center and the pink around the outer petals. Last year, they were a little more muted and subdued, but these are showy and vibrant and gave me a really, really nice display here in my yard. They also stand nice and straight and keep their heads up, which I really, really like. Just a very interesting contrast of colors. Next we have one called Cosmopolitan. This one is new to me. It's a kind of a creamy to white outer petals with a little bit of pink in the center, kind of ring of pink, which is very pretty. Unfortunately, these were hit very hard with rainstorms, but I did try my best to find some beautiful flowers for you to see. I really like these as well. I've really grown to appreciate the smaller types, even though I do love the big types of, you know, showy daffodils. These little smaller types, they have a lot to offer in the garden too, especially in cut flower arrangements. Very pretty, very, very nice. Next up, growing, we have one called, this is White Explosion, and this one was a total surprise for me. I had ordered White Explosion because I wanted an all white daffodil. But wow, these are really an all white daffodil. They are so double, they are so big. The blooms are enormous, and a lot of them have this really unique edging of kind of this orange yellow color, like outer petals, that just makes them so visually interesting. I had so much fun working these into flower arrangements. I will definitely grow more White Explosion in the future. Next up, we have one called Chroma Color. Chroma Color is new to me this year, and I am so pleasantly surprised. I had kind of avoided it because I thought it was kind of boring looking, like, yeah, you know, orange coral type cups, whatever. But as it would turn out, it is so vibrant and so pretty. I'm not disappointed. Those cups are practically glowing here in my yard, especially with the sun shining behind them, like it does late in the evening. Very crisp, very clean, very pretty. The stems are strong. The flowers are held high. You know, I just have so many good things to say about Chroma Color. I definitely am not disappointed by this one. Definitely want to keep this one. Next up, we have Sir Winston Churchill. This is a returner from last year. It is a smaller one, usually about 3 to 4 flowers here in my yard, but it's double. It's nice and big, very pretty, somewhat fragrant, a lot of kind of this orange yellow color in the center, which is something to take note of when we look at a different variety a little bit later. But, you know, a solid performer, decent stem length, no complaints. I'm not sure if it's my favorite, but definitely worth growing, I think. Next, we have a variety called Silver Chimes. Silver Chimes is completely new to me. This is a smaller type. As you can see, it's got that kind of a petite flower structure, I guess how I would describe it. It is a solid white, which I really, really love. I was really looking for a lot of solid white flowers this year, and these are just stinking adorable. These smaller types have really, really grown on me. I didn't notice any kind of fragrance or anything like that. But overall, definitely keeper. I'd love to grow more of these in the future. I only had just a handful of bulbs this year to kind of try out in my space. Next, we have one called Stainless. You'll remember Stainless from last year. This was one of the ones that kind of first got my interest in white daffodils. I wasn't sure I would enjoy white daffodils, but these stainless ones are so crisp and so clean and pretty. And like their name says, they really do seem to repel the stains, the mud splashes and the stains. They are always so clean looking. They do nod their heads down a little bit, but the stems are so strong. I really, really love them. Next, we have one called Avalanche. This is another smaller type, and admittedly this is one of the few smaller types that I've kind of been a little bit disappointed with. The flowers are adorable. They're so petite and cute and absolutely adorable, but the stems are just so short. I've had them for 2 or 3 years now, and the stems are just so short. I'm not sure how you use them for cut flower arrangements, unfortunately. Next is another smaller variety. This one is called Blushing Lady, but unlike the other smaller varieties, the stem length and the plant size and everything are great. They're so long, so strong, so tall. Just a creamy yellow color with kind of a blush peach center cup. Works well with a lot of the different pastel shades here in my spring garden. Definitely keeper, definitely one of my favorites in terms of the smaller cupped daffodils. The next variety to begin blooming was one called Pink Champagne. Last season, Pink Champagne was one of my favorites. Unfortunately, these got rained on really, really hard, and they had a lot of trouble in my garden this year. However, I was able to use them. In fact, I used Pink Champagne as the backbone of one of my first ever flower garlands that I made. You can see a video of that here on the channel. But they're just a very beautiful double. And rather than being double yellow or something, they're double peach color. They're very similar to Replete, but I would describe Pink Champagne as a little more pointy, if that makes sense. The petals are just seem to be a little more pointy rather than rounded in terms of comparison to Replete. I think they both have their own very special qualities. Next, here in the yard, coming into bloom, we have a beautiful variety called Sweet Ocean. Sweet Ocean is new to me this year. One of the main reasons I was first attracted to order Sweet Ocean was that all the photos I'd seen had this beautiful blend of yellow and orange in the double petals, and I was so happy to see that that was true. It was just absolutely gorgeous. Very, very pretty. It's a double. It's got that kind of blend of orange and yellow that gives it a little more depth and dimension. I haven't used it in mini cut flower arrangements or anything yet, but I'm really eager to. This was a late bloomer here in my yard. I'm sure that was affected a little bit by the planting time. I planted it very late last season. Moving along, we're almost to the end. I hope you're with me still. We have a variety called Nightcap. I grew this one for the first time last year. It was one of the later bloomers here in my yard, and consistently again it is. It nods down a little bit. Unfortunately, the head does nod down a little bit, but I think it makes up for it in the unique kind of cup coloration. It is so beautiful. The cups are kind of splayed open, and we have that very well defined ring of pink around the center that is so stunning. I love the difference in color in these. Very pretty. The next flower to begin opening here is one called Steph. I only had a few of these Steph daffodils, a few bulbs, but they're very surprising. They're very pretty. Like some of the other open single cups we've had, I love the way it kind of splays back to show itself. And in addition to having that unique center ring, that kind of contrast of pink color, they are insanely ruffled, and it just gives it such, such a beautiful dimension. I only ended up having 3 blooms from these this year because I think I only planted 5 bulbs, but I would definitely love to grow more of these in the future. They are just so unique in comparison to everything else that I grow. Next, we have one called Cheerfulness. This was the first year I'd ever grown Cheerfulness. Again, this is one that I'd kind of put off growing because I was like, oh, it looks kind of plain. It looks like Sir Winston Churchill. But whoa, was I wrong? Cheerfulness is one of my new favorites. As you can see, I ordered a 50 pack of these when they were on sale. Each bulb produced, each stem produced flowers with 5 or 6 blooms on it. It was incredible. The flower size is good. And the scent is incredible. These smell absolutely amazing. And when you have strong stems, the size, the smell, everything comes together. It's just something beautiful. A mass planting of these, absolutely gorgeous. Looks great in flower arrangements, smells great. I can't stop raving about them. Okay, we have to move on. The next daffodil that came into bloom was one called White Metal. Now, White Metal I had ordered because I thought that it was mostly white, but after seeing these in bloom, I'm kind of suspicious that maybe they were replaced by White Lion or another one of the yellow and white doubles. As you can see, these are very similar to Lingerie and Salou and even a little bit Peach Cobbler. I'm not quite sure of the true identity of this flower. Either way, I figured why not take video of it and show you what they look like. So this could be White Metal, but I think it also might not be White Metal. So if you have any thoughts on that, be sure to let me know about it down in the comments. I would love to hear what you think because I'm a little bit suspicious, and that happens sometimes when, wholesalers do that. So if that happens, what are you going to do? The next variety that we have in bloom here in the yard is one called Yaz. I grew Yaz last year. It was the first year for Yaz, and they came back strong and beautiful this year as well. They open up a creamy color and then kind of fade to this nice white that's very beautiful. And we have, again, that little bit of edging around the cup. The cup is more of a yellow compared to some of these other smaller varieties. I know a lot of these smaller varieties look very, very similar, but I did make sure that I was labeling them nice and clearly when I was, filming this video, because this video does take a lot of effort to compose. I hope y'all love it. Next, we have a variety called Coral Light. Coral Light is new to me this year, and it is a single variety, and surprisingly this variety kept attracting bees, which is interesting because I've never had daffodils attract bees before. But this Coral Light is very, very pretty. We have the coral cups, a little bit of a kind of rim around the center. You can see some of the flowers were more prominent with the rim than others. Most of them maintained this coral peach color consistently. Some of them had a little bit more white, more contrast. Still very nice either way though. Next in the garden we have one called Faith. This is just a single cup, but it's a very pretty peachy pink color. If you like the Haven one that I showed earlier, it's very, very similar, even though the Haven one had a little more of a, different, a different toothiness to it. But these cups are still very, very beautiful. Without a doubt, these are going to be a popular choice for cut flowers and arranging in the vases and things. Just so many good things to say. Next in the garden we have a variety called Happy Smiles. Happy Smiles is new to me this year as well. I only had a small handful of bulbs. The great thing about this is they have that beautiful color contrast that we had been talking about for this whole video, where there's that kind of outer ring. The pictures I've seen in catalogs were kind of more pronounced, but mine had a kind of a lighter pastel color, which I'm not disappointed by. I think they were very, very lovely, very nice. Next, we have one called Extravaganza. The Extravaganza were absolutely gorgeous. Big, full, double ruffled flowers, rather than some of the other doubles that we've seen here in the yard. The doubles of the Extravaganza are more of a vibrant kind of peachy coral mixed with orange, depending upon which stage you pick them in, which is very lovely, very pretty. So definitely no complaints there. Definitely one I would love to grow again. The next variety is Yellow Cheerfulness, and much like its white counterpart, it is a very beautiful double, just large multi-stemmed flowers, and it has that sweet, just classic daffodil fragrance that I just can't get enough of. Very, very pretty. These stems were a little smaller, a little shorter than the regular Cheerfulness. Here is the failed blooms. We had a lot of failed blooms this year. Unfortunately, we had snow and some ice, some late season ice. The first one that failed was my Flower Surprise, and I was so disappointed about this because Flower Surprise was one of my absolute favorite daffodils last year. As you can see from the photos in the video here, there are just tons and tons of these ruffly double flowers that are so enchantingly gorgeous, and they got hit by 4 to 6 inches of snow, unfortunately. So all of those buds, even though they were ready to open, they all died back. And that was a major disappointment for our daffodils this year. Hopefully we'll get them next year. Bridal Crown was another failure. I had first planted these last year, and they had grown beautifully and produced beautiful flowers. But unfortunately, for some reason, the plants failed completely to come back this year. There were not even any plants there. I'm not sure what happened. Everything I've seen, they're hardy in my zone, so I'm not quite sure what happened. It could have been a problem with drainage, I think is very likely. I've lost a lot of plants to drainage this year, so maybe that was it. But they are very pretty flowers. I'll have to try growing Bridal Crown daffodils again in the future. Barrett Browning also failed to bloom this year. Barrett Browning has been in my garden since the very first year that I grew daffodils, and unfortunately these were also hit by the snow fairly hard, And even though the buds were ready, you know, there was an intense freeze and a lot of snow, and they all just kind of crumpled to the ground and weren't able to recover. They're just a very simple single flower, very lovely nonetheless. Also, in the garden, we didn't have any can girl blooms. Much like the other ones that were affected by snow, we had strong, healthy plants that had come back, but for some reason they just, you know, when the snow came, it was just the perfect timing to where the buds were severely damaged. A lot of them were broken and just unfortunately didn't even open at all. So that's really a bummer. Can Girl was definitely one of my favorites last year. The same can also be said with the next daffodil that failed to open, very much due to the same circumstances. This is the double daffodil. This is called Acropolis. This is more of a very clean white double daffodil. This one is a lot more white than some of the other doubles, but you know, it still has that bit of orange in the center that it's very, very pretty and usable in flower arrangements with strong stems. Luckily, the foliage of all these different plants that failed is intact and will be, you know, hopefully recovering this summer so that they can bloom again next year. So all is not lost. Gay Tabor was another one that I had lost in the snow and wasn't able to get any blooms. It's very much a double. It's very similar to the Lingerie and the Salou and the Double Star, but still important to note. Double Star was another one, speaking of Double Star, that did not bloom because of the snow. It seems like it was kind of the mid-season to late season daffodils, a big group of them that really got hit. And last but certainly not least, I didn't have any likey or leaky or however you say it flowers. I do believe that this is completely unrelated to the snow, but rather that my planting has simply just gotten too big and it needs to be divided because the flowers are very sparse. And in the past, this was a very, very reliable producer of flowers. That's really about it for this video and this garden tour. Thank you so incredibly much for watching. I am so appreciative of you, and I genuinely mean that. Without you, none of this would be possible. None of these, you know, growing none of these flowers would be possible, and it means the world to me. So thank you. Please do feel free to leave a comment down below. I would absolutely love to hear anything you have to say about the garden or about daffodils or anything like that. As always, links to everything, my Patreon and the blog and everything is down in the description below. There's also like a free garden planner down there and all kinds of stuff. Just thank you so much for the support. I hope that you're having an incredible day and I hope it's bright and sunny wherever you are, and I'll talk to y'all later. Bye.